All right, just like when we did law of sines, when I look at this triangle, I don't see a right angle. So I need to use something else in order to solve. Now the problem I run into, if I'm trying to do law of sines, I need filled in at one pairing of angle and opposite side. So here I have blank angle, but I have a filled in opposite side, okay? Here I have a filled in angle, blank side, okay? Blank angle, filled in side. So it doesn't work. Nowhere do I have an angle and its opposite side filled in. So I cannot use law of sines. It won't work in this case. I have too many blanks, okay? So when we have this scenario here, what I want to show you is we have this side filled in, and we have this side filled in, and we have the included angle. Then we can use law of cosines, and it solves for this opposite side, okay? So these are the things that we need filled in. We need this angle, and then these two sides that bracket, that create that angle, okay? So that's a perfect scenario for law of cosines. And law of cosines says that our yellow side squared is equal to one of our green sides squared plus the other green side squared minus 2 times the two green sides multiplied times cosine of, I'm going to go ahead and show that the included angle is orange, so cosine of the included angle. That included angle is always opposite your yellow side, okay? All right, so that's how you use law of cosines, okay? So the only adjustment I'm going to make to this formula here is it's solving for a squared, but really that doesn't get me anywhere. I want just a. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root of all of this to get just a. All right, so it really is side A is equal to square root of b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times cosine of angle A. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use to just like eliminate one step. All right, so we don't have to take the square root later. Okay, so let's see if we have a scenario for law of cosines here. I have my two filled in sides. I have the side that is I have the other side, and then I have the angle that's included in between my two filled in sides. So I have a case for law of cosines right here. In law of cosines, all I'm going to do, I'm going to use this whole thing right here to say that my yellow side, x, is equal to the square root of, now it doesn't matter which one I call b, which one I call c, just as long as I remember one of them is one thing, the other is another. It doesn't matter which is which. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this one. Is equal to the square root of 8 squared plus, now the other side, 12 squared minus 2 times, doesn't matter which one I go with first, 8 times 12 times cosine of 65. Oops. And that's what I'm going to put into my calculator. Now, these calculators, you don't need to worry about putting all these brackets in that I put. I just put them in so you can see multiplication. You don't get confused and are like, hey, is that a decimal? All right. So really what you put into the calculator, you start with your square root, and then you put 8 squared, all that stuff. Okay? You can put it in exactly as you would verbally read it. So after putting all of that into my calculator, I get 11.3. Now, if you're putting all of this into your calculator and you do not get 11.3, at that point, maybe talk to your teacher and be like, hey, teacher, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. My calculator, I'm putting everything in right, and then the teacher might be able to help you out and tell you what you're putting into the calculator wrong, okay? So So 11.3. So our yellow side right here is 11.3. Okay? And then if we wanted to, we could keep doing law of cosines to solve for like the other angles or something, or we could use law of sines to solve for the other angles. I'm not going to go ahead and do that right now because we don't need these notes to be longer than they need to be. Okay? We just have an x that we solved for. That's good enough. All right, next. This time, our two filled in sides are right here. The side we're solving for, our x, is right here. And the problem is our included angle between these two sides, there's nothing there. So technically, in this particular case, we could have used law of sines, right? Because we have, here we have opposite angle and opposite side filled in already. We have opposite angle, opposite side filled in already. So we could have just easily solved for this angle. No, we couldn't solve for this angle using law of sines. But like this would have been a candidate for law of sines once we have our orange angle. Now we don't need any specific law for our orange angle. Instead, we just notice that we have two angles. And so altogether, all three angles need to add up to 180. So two angles, add those two up and subtract that from 180. And then that'll give us our other angle, which is 76 degrees. So this angle right here is 76 degrees. Now, from here, you could have used law of sines. Now we have some opposites filled in, and we're just looking for one more opposite. Could have used law of sines, but we're on law of cosines notes, so let's go ahead and use our law of cosines. Now we have both of our greens, we've got the orange, and we're solving for that yellow. Okay, so x is equal to square root of 4 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 4, or 5 times 4, or 4 times 5, either way it works, cosine 76. Okay? That's what you put into your calculator. I'm just plugging it into the formula. The colors help me see where things go in the formula, right? All of my green stuff is this right here. The 2 is always there in the formula. Okay? So here's my green sides, right? Here's the orange angle. And here's the yellow that we're solving for. So that's why I put all the colors, so we know, like, oh, just put it into the formula and go from there. Okay? So then when I do all of that, I get that this is 5.6. So my x is 5.6. Okay? Pretty straightforward for this one. All right, now it gets a little tiny bit more complicated. Now, if I look at this case right here, the reason why I'm putting both of these in green is the angle that we're talking about, my orange angle, is right here. That means these two are green, even though that side is already filled in. Okay, so here's the orange angle, right? And then here's the yellow. So this time, we already know what yellow is. We need to find our orange angle. So I'm not actually going to solve for x in this particular one because we have 2 more examples of solving for x. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rework this formula to figure out how to get this orange angle by itself. Okay? So what we want to end up with is just this orange angle on one side. So that means we have to move all this other stuff to the other side. So let's see, let's start over here. How do we move this b squared to the other side? Well, it's not being multiplied by anything, so therefore I could just subtract it from both sides to move it. So I'm going to subtract b squared from both sides. Okay, that cancels out my b squared. What about c squared? Well, again, c squared isn't being multiplied by anything, so instead I could just subtract c squared to remove it. So subtract c squared from both sides. That gets rid of c squared. So now let me rewrite this a little bit. I get a squared minus b squared minus c squared is equal to negative 2bc cosine A. All right. Now I have to find a way still to get this A by itself. So how do I move this 2bc? Well, this is being multiplied by something. All of these are being multiplied together, and they are also being multiplied by cosine of A. So to move it, I need to go ahead and divide by that on both sides. That gets rid of that. So now I just have cosine A on one side, and I have all of this on the other side. How do I get A instead of cosine A? Well, you have to take the inverse. So I take inverse cosine of A squared minus B squared minus C squared, all of this stuff that I just did. If I take the inverse, then I'm just left with angle A. So that's the formula I'm going to use in order to solve for a missing angle. So where's our greens and yellows? Let's see. My yellow piece is what I started with right here. My first letter is yellow. Okay? And then these two right here are green. These two right here are green. And then the orange is what I'm solving for. All right? So let's see if we can use this formula to solve for a missing angle. Why are we doing all this? Because we're trying to find a missing angle. And we cannot use law of sines on this because we have 0 angles. All right? So if you have 0 angles, you have to use law of cosines. No choice. All right? So our included angles right here, which means these two are our green pieces. All right? You always make your green pieces to bracket that angle. So here is the orange angle that we're solving for, which means this is our yellow piece right here. So now if I have to write all of this into my formula, I'm going to go ahead and say inverse cosine of yellow. First thing I put was yellow. So 6 squared, because yellow is squared right there, minus one of my green sides squared. So 4 squared it is. It doesn't matter which one you go with first. Next green side squared, 3 squared. See, I'm just plugging it into the formula. Over negative 2, we always have a negative 2, and my 2 green pieces. So 4 and 3. Now, when I put this into my calculator, there are some things to be aware of here. All right. I want to go ahead, first thing I'm going to do my trig, like always. I'm going to go ahead and go down to the inverse. So I have an inverse cosine right here. Okay, from here, I'm going to press Control Divide so that I have a numerator and a denominator, so that my calculator cannot possibly make the mistake to accidentally put something where it doesn't go. That way I don't have to worry about putting additional brackets or anything like this. So from here, I just enter everything in the calculator exactly as I have it written. Move down, negative 2 times 4 times 3. So exactly as written right there. Enter, and I get 117.3 degrees. Okay, so our orange angle is 117.3 degrees. All right, so law of cosines, pretty easy. All you have to do is, if you're solving for an angle, put things into this formula. If you're solving for a side, put things into the other formula. All right, let's try that one more time, solving for an angle. Okay? My orange angle that I'm solving for is right here, which means my 2 green sides are right here. and which means that my yellow side, which is the side I need to start with in that formula, is right here. So now I just need to plug things into this formula. Inverse cosine. Why? Because we're solving for an angle. Inverse cosine of yellow squared minus one of my green sides squared, doesn't matter which one comes first. Then minus 2 times my 2 green sides on the bottom. So 3 times 6. These are times brackets, which is equal to. You're going to put all of this into the calculator. And once you put it into the calculator, you should end up with 36.3 degrees. So, good luck using your law of cosines to solve.